Hello again, and welcome to another episode of Stories from Real Life. I'm your host, Melvin E. Edwards. Thank you for joining me for the podcast where personal stories can have a global impact. As you heard in the intro, our guest today is talent agent Albert Bramante. Albert, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Melvin. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Thank you for being here. So, you have a unique combination of careers: talent agent, psychology professor, author, and speaker. So, which came first, and how did the other ones follow?
What came first was the psychology background. Well, I majored in psychology because I've been always interested in the human brain, the human mind. I've always had an inquisitive, curious nature as a child, so I was definitely the one that asked questions, the ones that literally probed, and I really felt like that was beginning of a natural skill set for me. And so when I was in high school, I did a lot of reading. Like library was my sanctuary, for pretty much my teenage life. So I read books about the brain and behavior, and it was so intriguing to me. And that led me down the hole of majoring into psychology during my undergraduate years. Now, also while this was happening, both in high school and college, I had some interest in the performing arts, not a whole lot. So I was in a drama club in high school. I took some theater and acting classes as electives in college or my college years. And then I just really grew from there and really expanded from there into pursuing it at some point after I received my master's degree. So I went directly from undergrad to my master's degree, so like 6 years of straight schooling full time. I had initially applied for four PhD programs, land-based clinical psychology PhD programs. Unfortunately, I overestimated my ability and underestimated how competitive PhD programs were. I should have applied to more. I didn't, and I didn't get into the programs I had chosen. So now I had to get a job because this is my first time in my entire life where in September I didn't wasn't going back to school, so it felt odd. Now, coincidentally, during my master's degree, I landed an internship at a talk show in New York, the
Okay.
Sally Just Raphael show, which was an old
Okay.
show.
I've heard of that show. Remember Sally's
Yeah,
red glasses?
the red glasses, the trademark red glasses. So I worked in the counseling area of that, like more of aftercare and helping with the guests after the show so that they wouldn't kill each other or that they would get the help that they needed. It was sort of both a ethical and legal requirement for all talk shows to kind of have this service. So I did that. Coincidentally, the it was the same year of 9/11. So in the fall, when after the aftermath of 9/11, the my contact who I worked at Sally with had called me up and said, "Hey, I need some help to go onto the ground, do some crisis intervention, do some counseling, do some advocacy work." And so that's where I started with that. Now, I was teaming up at that time with artist guilds, organizations, and that kind of reignited my passion into acting. And so I started off in the show business side of things as an actor. But for me, acting wasn't giving me my fulfillment or my joy. What was really giving me the joy in this business was working with actors, being on set with actors, the energy, the essence of actors was what was giving me that joy. And so that kind of, led me to come to the conclusion where I really want to work in this field. I want to work with actors. I don't want to be one, but I want to work with them. So I did some casting, I did some volunteering at film festivals, and lo and behold, I wound up starting my first company, a talent management company in 2004, which later transitioned to a talent agency in 2007. And so that kind of that was the second part of my career. So I had the psychology, and then now I have the talent agency. I was able to combine the two of them in a certain endeavor because for my doctoral dissertation, which is a thesis, I had to come up and solve a problem in a sense of something that was like of concern. And the one issue that I kept bringing up against was actors and self sabotage and self doubt and imposter syndrome. that I was seeing as a recurrent theme in my business. And so it was something that was really racking my brain and concerning me. So my doctor's dissertation was on self-defeating behavior in performing artists, which then later into my book, Rise Above the Script. So it was a wonderful way for me to combine both worlds. And so that's where I was able to combine that. And that's where the show business side came in. And kind of like the even the instance where I can become a performance mindset coach based on all of this. So that's kind of in really in essence of how all my worlds kind of came together.
It's interesting that you talked about actors with imposter syndrome. That's curious to me because actors are pretending to be
Hmm.
somebody else, but they have a hard time being themselves, is what you're saying. Some of
To
the actors.
some level, yes, because while the field is exciting and it fulfills everyone's their dreams of being creative and telling stories, it's an incredibly tough business to break into and to have and to make money, not only to break into but make money doing so. So the reason why it's so tough is because it's overly saturated. And there's, at least in New York where I'm based out of, at least 100 to 150,000 actors, if not more. And then you almost double that for Hollywood and Los Angeles. And then you have Atlanta, which is a budding acting community. So you're dealing with at least three, 400,000 or 500,000 actors, and only a limited number of roles. So it's a very overly saturated market. So no matter how talented an actor is, they're going to be told no a lot when it comes to auditioning. And I think what really makes the auditioning process sometimes harder is you don't really get feedback. So it's not like very rarely do you get told no directly. The way you know that it's kind of like a no is you don't hear anything back. It's like no feedback, no news is news, if you think about it.
Mhm.
So that can add things up over time. And add to that familiar pressures from family and from loved ones who may not understand the business. So maybe they'll go back to Thanksgiving dinner or Christmas dinner or holiday dinner with their families, and you'll often hear, well, so you're an actor, so what have you been in? And then they'll say, well, I haven't really done much. And then sometimes you'll get well intentioned, and when I say well intentioned, because the intentions are good, but the messaging is poor. Well, it's like, well, you've been acting for so long. Do you think it's time to get a real job? Do you think maybe it's time to find something tangible, like a 9 to 5? And so that can add in
Okay,
and kind of fuel that imposter syndrome coming in because of that. You don't have that validation.
that makes sense. So I've got a couple of sort of lighthearted questions here to ask you. So
Hmm.
first, if Hollywood made a movie about your life, what would the title be, and who would you want to play you?
Interesting question. I would say probably Beautiful Chaos because, like, a lot of, I did go through some messy, situations. I wouldn't say like horror, like tragically messy, but chaos. But it all worked out. And who to play me? Trying to think. I'd have to come back to it, but there's an actor in Succession that Jeremy something, but that would be who I'd want to play me. Who played the oldest son? A very serious but very conflicted character that he played. So I think he could do myself very good, at least
Okay,
my earlier time.
all right. So you're having dinner. You can have dinner with any three people, living or dead, and they all have to be from different fields. Who would be at your table?
Interesting question. So I would say probably Tony Robbins would be, the first person from the personal development field. I probably would say the founder of William Morris Endeavor, so William Morris himself, for the agent side and business side of things. So I'd get the motivation in the business. And probably, from a familiar side, my grandmother, who I was very close to growing up, who had passed away when I was 14. Those three would be at my table.
Okay, that sounds good. So, what's one talent you have that your students or clients would be completely shocked to discover?
I think the fact that I have a good memory about things. And I would have students, sometimes students would come up to me and say, "Hey, do you remember me?" And I was able to recall the not only the year, but the class that they were in, which, like I'll tell you recently, it was December of 2023. And I was, after dinner in New York, I was coming back home, and the student ran up to me and said, "Hey, do you remember me?" And I just went to the staff. "Oh, yeah, you were in my summer session one class, 2008. Jennifer was your name, right? You were in my Psych 101 class."
Wow.
And I didn't even think, I was just randomly, so that's what I remembered. And I saw her go pale, almost. And she got emotional. She's like, "You remember?" I said, "Yes." Another time, same kind of situation. I was recently at an event, and the student comes to me, "Hey, remember?" I said, "Yeah, you were in my fall 2008 child psychology class." And I said her first and last name, and her mouth hit the floor. So, and it's not something I try to do. It's one of those things where a memory is a blessing and a curse at times. The blessing is, yeah, I'm glad I have it, but at the same time, there are things I wish I could forget, but I don't.
I completely understand that sentiment. Completely. Because my mind works much the same way.
Yeah,
So, how does your background in psychology influence how you represent talent?
I think for me, it aids a layer of understanding and maybe a little more compassion. And when I say understanding, I mean like patience for maybe certain quirks or behaviors of actors that might, rub other agents the wrong way. Because some actors, the interesting thing about actors, even though they have that common denominator of performing, they all have different personalities. Some are very independent, where it's like, I'll rarely hear from them unless I have an audition or a career-related issue. Some are constantly contacting me, like on a weekly basis, even a few on a daily basis. Like, what's going on? Which for some, if you don't really understand actors, it can be a challenge to do that, to hear from that, because it's like, there's a neediness there sometimes.
So, have you found that working in the entertainment industry has taught you lessons that you bring back to the classroom?
Yes. So the main thing I would say is resilience and grit and perseverance and the importance of that. So, and it relates to just being able to be persistent, especially in a field where you're going to get told no, because there are a lot of successful actors that audition sometimes a few hundred times before they land their first job. And some have been discovered later in life. Like Morgan Freeman really became a household name until he was in his late 50s. Till he did a couple of breakout roles in the 80s. So it wasn't until that time, but he was acting a long time prior to that. So that's the main thing I think it would really bring that I can bring to the classroom is the importance of perseverance, grit, sticking through things, and resilience. Just getting back up again. And we can learn this lesson. And this is it might seem trivial, but it's very, I think, impactful. So if anybody who's been a parent or who's been around children, the one critical task or thing that's important is to learning to walk. Now, if anybody's, seen, or been a witness to that, it's a lengthy process. First they have to learn to stand without support, being able to take the first steps. And what do? They fall down several hundred times. But we've never seen somebody say, "I can't do this walking thing." And we never see a parent say to a child, "You shouldn't be walking. Walking's not in the cards for you." Yet it's through that grit and that determination of just failing so many times that eventually they're able to walk. And for some reason, we have tended all of us have tended to lose that determination, that perseverance. That when we fail a few times at something, I give up, or even just one time, I'm done.
All right. So, what do you look for when deciding to represent a client?
So there's a couple of things. There's several things I look for. Number one is talent, of course. Number two is personality. So do we click? Because usually we'll have like a couple of one-on-one meetings, and are we going to mesh and match as individuals? The third thing is how much of a business person are you? Because it's called show business for a reason. So every actor and performer is really an entrepreneur by heart. So, what is your entrepreneurial spirit like and workflow like? And so, I want to see business skills. The other thing, and another important thing to consider is an actor can have all of that and be great. But if I already have a couple of people of that same type already on the roster that they would be directly a competitor with, I may not take them on initially.
So, what's one common mistake aspiring actors or performers make when approaching an agent?
So they're either too desperate, where it's like they approach it like it's ride or live or die, and so that can be a bit of a turn off. Another thing, I mean, even on the opposite side, can be where there's not enough follow through. So, like for example, I may meet an actor, and I might say, okay, I need more info after the meeting. Can you send me your demo? Can you send me reviews? Can you send me any press information or whatever you have? Weeks, months go by, and I'm like, oh, here it is. I'm like, wait, what happened? Because the business moves incredibly fast, and you have to be able to respond fast and get back fast. So sometimes just being too laid back is not good. Being desperate or pushy is not good either. And approaching it, I think another mistake is entitlement, having an entitlement mindset. And the reality is when a talent rep or a talent agent is working with a client, it is a partnership. It is not like one's not working for the other. So I think a misconception some actors think, oh, my agent's working for me. No, we're not. We're not your employee. We're your partner. We're a partnership. We're a business partnership. But we're not, nobody's an employee of another.
Okay. So, what kind of trends are you seeing now in the entertainment industry?
Well, it's been a very rocky 5 years because in 2020 we had COVID, which really brought the industry to a standstill. And then, I'd say in late 2020, early 2021, we started to see a revival. We then in 2023, we had two strikes. We had the Writers Guild strike and the Screen Actors Guild strike, which put things on hold for a long time. So it's a bit slow. It's been like I said, a very interesting 5 years. So, but what I've also seen is more in the types of casting and the types of actors is more diversity and inclusion, which is something I really value and I really like. And that is a change I'm really happy to see. So might not have been your stereotypical leading characters of the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s is now changed because now it's really everyday people telling the story.
That's great. So, what psychological principles are more helpful when negotiating deals or managing clients?
Well, I think psychological principles is being very patient um, when it comes to working with actors and when negotiating deals. Even just principle negotiating 101 is, obviously you need to have some type of leverage, but also I think the human skill comes into it because we have to understand that we have to provide value too. If I'm going to be walking to a negotiation table or trying to negotiate anything, the main thing that I really need to have or is to give value to other people. So what do I have that's valuable? And what can I give you that's valuable? Because if I'm going to ask you to increase your rate or do something, I have to come to the table with something. So I always approach it as a human being. This person on the other end is a human being. This other person has a need that needs to be filled. I have that need. I have that talent that can fulfill that need. So I think a lot of it is by being patient, compassion, as
Okay.
well as playing hardball. Like the stereotypical agent that I have in TV and movies is not my type of the way I work. And some agents, yes, some agents may be a little more hardball than others. And in certain situations that can be effective. But I feel like at the end of the day, it's all about relationship.
All right. So, let's talk about your book. I mentioned at the beginning that one of your roles is as an author. So, tell me about your book and what you hope readers take away from it.
So the book, as I was kind of saying in my intro, came out of necessity for it's part of my doctoral dissertation. Like that was a foundation for it. So the book really looks at self-sabotage. Now I had wrote the book in with actors and performers in mind because those are my client avatar at the moment. So that was my focus. Now, but I've often included a lot of general strategies in the book that are good for anybody. Because you could almost break down, we're all performing artists, whether we're sales or going into coaching or public speaking or teaching, we're performing in some sense a role. And so that was kind of like what I wrote the book in mind for too. So there's a lot of actionable strategies. I'll tell you a couple of them right here. The one of them is the company you keep. Watch the company you keep. Proximity is power. If you want to be successful, then your environment needs to be around successful people, not people that are going to be negative and moan about situations or gripe and complain. You want to be around people that are going to build you up and that are even slightly more successful than you are at the moment. And need to be always learning, consuming content. And nowadays with the internet and digital world, it's so easy to consume content on virtually anything. And whether that be from courses, YouTube, or podcasts.
Okay. So when you do public speaking, how does that differ from teaching when you're in a classroom?
Well, teaching is public speaking. The only difference that I can really say is sometimes with public speaking, I'm more talking with colleagues or even people that are above me. Whereas with students, I'm kind of in a role, playing a role already. I'm a teacher. I already have this knowledge, and sometimes that can make a big difference because now I do get a little bit of anxious when I'm speaking in front of colleagues or even people that are above me. I don't have that stage fright or anxiety when it comes to students because I'm providing a role.
Makes sense. That makes sense. So, what topics do you find the audience most hungry to learn when you are acting in your role as a speaker?
Overcoming self-imposed limitations, subconscious blocks, work. Again, imposter syndrome was very popular that comes up. Self-doubt and just actionable strategies. Because the one thing, and I've always said this as when you're giving a public speech, you want to give actionable strategies. Talking theory is great, but that's important. But at the same time, there should be some practical value. So if I'm giving a 10-minute or 15-minute speech, I may cover a little bit of theory, but I think the main thing to cover are some actionable strategies or something that the audience can take away with them. Not walk away like, what did you learn? I don't remember.
That makes sense. So, is there a pivotal moment in your career that completely changed your perspective?
I would say just getting my PhD, becoming a published author, really just really changed my perspective is just getting out of our own way. How, how really powerful that can be.
All right. So, what's the most surprising lesson you've learned from working with high achieving creatives?
I think that the vulnerability aspect of it, that just because somebody may be high achieving, they may be an A-list celebrity or CEO of a Fortune 500 company, or even a top motivational speaker, they often deal with their moments of self-doubt and even a little bit of self-consciousness too.
So, how do you personally stay motivated when you're juggling different roles? When you're a teacher, you're a talent agent, you're an author and speaker. How do you stay motivated?
Well, the one thing is to create a sense of wonder and adventure. Each day something new is going to happen. Each day something exciting is going to happen. Consider much different because like I'm the type of person when most of my colleagues that work like 9 to 5 jobs or who work corporate jobs dread Mondays because Monday's back to work. I'm different. I must be a unicorn because I consider Mondays to be exciting. New week ahead. What's so new? So I think having like a childlike wonder of adventure is important.
That makes total sense. All right. So, who is your favorite actor of all time and why?
Um, I have a couple. I would say the two that really come into is like Anthony Hopkins and Vincent D'Onofrio, or both character actors. I think the ability to just transform into a role, which looks so effortlessly, but at the same time, they're working incredibly hard to do that. But to make things seem so naturally.
Is there a book, film, or some type of work of art that has deeply influenced your thinking?
I would say book would be like Tuesdays with Maury. Was one of the books that really made an impact on me. A lot of even movies growing up, like motivational movies. Patch Adams was one that really Good Will Hunting. Things that really bring up the human spirit.
All right. Are there any actors, actresses who are sort of up and coming, whose names we should be looking out for?
I do have a couple. I mean, even some people who were previous clients of mine are now working in shows, like people that kind of I helped start. Like I have a client, former client that's on the new Dexter series right now on Showtime, the reboot. I have another client who is a series, former client that was a series regular on SVU now and now on the show FBI. So a lot of my clients are working actors, so who got, I helped them start, opened the door for them. And then, of course, they just rose up and really took off, which is amazing.
Have any of them appeared in motion pictures yet?
I had a couple of clients who booked, like one, a couple clients are in the new Grown Up sequel, or the Happy Gilmore sequel. So, yes, I have had clients who've been in cinema too, feature film.
Okay, nice. Okay, as a final question, one that I ask all of my guests, what's one piece of advice you'd like to leave to the listeners today? And it can be on any subject you wanted.
The one piece of advice is really connect to your why and stay motivated as to that. So there can be a lot of, and there will be a lot of distractions day to day, week to week. So the biggest thing is remain committed to your why and what it is that you really set out to do.
Okay, I said that was my last question, but I want to follow up that one. What is your why?
Interesting question. I'm glad you asked that. I think for me, the why is to connect people together. I'm a connector by heart, and I enjoy connecting people because especially if that connection can help create something meaningful in a person's life. So I'm a connector. I've connected students and classes together that I've taught. I've connected actors together. I've connected other professionals together, and a lot of times it's been a meaningful way.
Okay, that sounds great. That's a great way to wind up this conversation today. So, our guest today is talent agent Albert Bramante. Albert, thank you so much for being here today.
Great. Well, thank you so much.
Please go to my website at podcastreallife.com for more information about my guest and the things we discussed today, including links to his information. That's it for
Great.
today's episode of Stories from Real Life. Join us again next time for another chance to learn from each other. Until then, don't forget to shine your light wherever you go.